My name is Ruth Eleanor Vance. I'm 67 years old, and I live in an old wooden house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina. I've been a teacher for almost 3 decades. Today, I am just a lady who has learned to live with more silences than visits. But tell me something. Have you ever been accused of stealing what abandonment itself has put in your hands? Because that's what happened to me. My daughter left me with my 3 grandchildren when they were still small. He said he would be back at the end of the day. That day never came. And then I became everything. Mother again, nurse, Nora, Denise Jant Tangkal, Anwenshe, Desired, cook, Ali, teacher, lap on fever nights, for 13 years, not knowing if she was alive, without hearing a thank you. And when she finally came back, it was with a lawyer by his side, and the word kidnapping in his mouth. If you're here because you felt a tightness in your chest just hearing this, I understand. This story is not only mine, it is of those who have already been forgotten by those who helped the most. Today, noon, I'm going to tell you how I created 3 lives, and I almost lost mine in front of a court, because time takes its toll, but it also answers. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. The day I sat in front of a judge, with my daughter accusing me of kidnapping the very grandchildren I raised, there was a yellow envelope inside my bag, an envelope that I kept for years, without ever showing it to anyone. And when the judge opened it, he stopped for a few seconds. He looked me in the eye and asked, "Do they know that?" I could only shake my head and say, "Not yet." So, if this story has already squeezed your heart so far, if you know the bitter taste of being wronged by those you loved too much, I invite you to stay with me. It's not an easy story, but it's a true story. If you can, leave your like, not for me, but for all the grandmothers, mothers, and women who have already been forgotten. And subscribe to the channel, to continue listening to stories that have pain, but also have dignity. Your presence here gives me the strength to continue speaking after so long being silent. I wake up early every day, even though I don't have any more obligations. The habit remained from my school days, when I taught literature at Jefferson High School. Today, now, I wake up because the silence of the house calls me, as if to say, "How? Get up, Ruth. Why? There are still those who need you." I live in a simple wooden house, one of those with a balcony that crackles when the sun hits. It's in the Montford neighborhood, a charming old part of Asheville right here. The trees are tall and old like me. They shade on hot days and seem to whisper on cold days. Sometimes I find myself talking to them. My 3 grandchildren have lived with me since they were little. Arthur is 20 now, works in a bicycle workshop, and has a good heart, just like his grandfather's. Emily, my 18, is quiet, but she is the most attentive of all. I accompany her in everything, because since she was 13, she has had type 1 diabetes. I make a point of going with her to appointments. I learned how to measure glucose. Prepare sugar-free food. Nidinjal. Our stone toxigas. Understand what hypoglycemia is. It was like going back to school, only for love. Hannah is the youngest. She is 16. She is sweet, dreamy, dull, plays the violin as if the whole world lives at the tip of the bow. When she practices on the porch, wow, the sound invades the house like a bomb. I close my eyes and feel like in a place where everything will be fine. On Sundays, I still make waffles. It may sound silly, but keeping this tradition was my way of keeping hope alive. They wake up with the smell and sit at the table with that good laziness, laughing among themselves. None of them talk about their mother. Now, not even when they were little. It's as if the void she left was something we learned to respect without touching her. At first, I tried to explain. It said that Emily, no, Arthur's and Hannah's mom, was traveling, working, busy. But as the years went by and no cards, no calls, no visits arrived, I stopped making excuses. I started to offer only lap. And when someone asked about Claire, at the grocery store, at church, even at the drugstore, I just smiled weakly and changed the subject. Not out of shame, but because there are wounds that we need to protect from the wind. I never let them lack anything. I gathered what I had from my retirement, sold some jewelry that my husband had given me when he was still alive, and followed. Now, we learned to live with little, but there was never a love of love. Taking care of them gave me strength, but it also tired me. I had to be strong even when I just wanted to be old. I've had days when my back froze from bending down so much to pick up toys, dirty clothes, children crying. But I didn't complain. I never complained, because every hug, every signed notebook, every night that one of them slept leaning against my shoulder, it was a way of saying, "You're not alone, Grandma, Pam." And yet, no, inside me, no, I began to a part was waiting for her. Claire, Linux, and Serba, Polkan, my daughter, Myers Delta, Medicine Sudan. I thought, Niran, and Sikasan Cox, what how? One day she will come back. Go explain it to me. How? He will ask for forgiveness. Go hug your children. But time went by, only die. And instead of news, there was only the echo. Do you know what's harder? It's when you give your best for someone. And that person doesn't even know it. You can't even imagine. It is to love in the dark. Love without return. I know there are people listening to me now who understand exactly what I am saying. Allow me to pause and ask, have you ever felt that too? That kind of lonely love, that silence that weighs more than any scream? If so, comment below. How did you comment? He says, I've lived it, or it touched me, or even just it's true. Just so I know I'm not talking to myself, that there is someone there feeling along with me, because sometimes we just need to be heard. For a long time, that was my life. Care, love, silence. Wait, until one day the phone rang, and on the other side, the voice I thought I would never hear again. Well, but he didn't come with nostalgia, nor with forgiveness. He came with a threat, and the question she asked still burns inside me to this day. Why did you hide my children from me? What did I answer? Right. You will understand in the next part. Because there are things that can only be said when the heart stops trembling. I remember that day as if it had happened yesterday. It was a gray Tuesday. Low sky. Muggy. Wow. The kind of day when the silence of the street seems to warn you that something is going to change. I was in the kitchen, well, trying to make a banana cake that hadn't sunk since 1993, when I heard the short horn outside. I walked out onto the porch, wiping my hands on her apron, and saw Claire getting out of an Uber with the three little ones, Arthur at 7, Emily at 5, Hannah at 3. They had disheveled hair, wrinkled clothes, and each one holding something in their hand. An armless doll, a broken stroller, a dirty diaper in a plastic bag. Moo. Claire was coming behind, panting, and carrying a grocery bag full of badly washed bottles, 2 children's panties, an adult pajama, and an open bag of cookies. When he got in front of me, he didn't hug me. I just said quickly, no, looking around. Little cow, and I found bites. Mom, I need you to stay with them today. It is urgent. I'll be back tonight. Okay? I didn't even have time to ask what was going on. She pushed the bag at me, kissed each child in a hurry. She didn't even look them in the eye, and ran back to the car. I stood there, holding the bag and watching the car disappear around the corner as if it had taken half of me away and left the other part bleeding on the sidewalk. The children were quiet, as if they had already understood that it was not a visitor. Arthur looked at me without blinking. Emily leaned against my knee, and Hannah hugged me by the legs without saying anything. I took the 3 inside and started to take care of them, as if my body knew what to do. But my heart was still lost on the sidewalk. I took a hot bath with chamomile, put on clean clothes that I found stored from some church bazaar, gave milk with honey, and put an old drawing on TV. At night, I arranged mattresses in the living room, because they slept right there, hugging each other. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the light off and waited for the car stereo, but he never returned. The next day, I called Claire's number. 66. He called until he dropped. I tried again. Then again. I sent a message. No response. In the following days, I left a message in the mailbox. Daughter, nay, everything is fine. Just tell me when you're coming to pick them up. But there was no answer, just that silence that hurts more than any scream. The diapers are gone. The milk too. I went to the pharmacy to buy everything with my card. When the attendant asked, Are they your grandchildren? I, I only replied, listen, how? For now, they are my children. Sometimes I am asked why I didn't suspect it right away. But a mother always wants to believe, always find excuses for silence. In the beginning, I said to myself, Liao would come. She must be solving something urgent. Maybe he lost his cell phone. Maybe his in another city. Maybe, but the truth, it's just that I saw it in her eyes. I saw it in that second when he handed me the children and didn't look me in the eyes. I knew she wasn't going back, but knowing and accepting are very different things. And it took me a long time to stop putting 2 cups of coffee on the table. A lot of time. And you know the worst? It's just that there's a detail of that afternoon that haunts me to this day. A gesture so small that no one would notice. But for me, it was like a sign. Do you want to know what it was? So, get ready, because this memory still wakes me up at dawn. That afternoon, when Claire turned her back and the car disappeared around the corner. And so, she left more than her children. She left a heavy silence, a kind of emptiness that you can't hear, but feel inside your skin. And it was in a small gesture, which haunts me to this day. Wow, that I knew what she was doing. As she placed the children on my lap, Claire dropped a letter from the bank from the bag. I caught a glimpse of her name, and before I could ask her anything, she pushed her foot under the couch and said, I'll get that later. It never caught on. He never returned? No. In the days that followed, the phone rang only when someone from the church wanted to know if I was going to the service. I called her number more than 30 times. After 2 days, he was disconnected. The children asked at first, but stopped when they saw that the answer was always the same. She still hasn't answered. Honey, Arthur started to wet the bed again. Emily was mute for almost 2 weeks. She only drew. Hannah screamed in the middle of the night. Oh, what, how? Sweaty, calling out to her mother in a choked voice, as if waiting for her to come out of the closet. I did everything. Doctor, school, food, bath. I took them to the health center. Then, where they asked me if I was the legal guardian. I said yes with my head, but inside I trembled. There was no document. The authorization? No. Nothing. Only love. Just need. I sold some jewelry that my husband left me. They weren't expensive, but they had value to me. I bought food, medicine, new clothes. With the pension, it was barely enough for everything. I started to buy on sale, learn cheap recipes, make toys with pet bottles and fabric scraps, and in the middle of it all, fear, the fear of knocking on the door and taking them away from me. A neighbor, Mr. Hine, Lawrence even said, Ruth, seek social assistance. They can help. But I didn't want help that came with bureaucracy. What if they thought I was too old? What if they decided to put them in a shelter? I wasn't going to allow it. Not after I saw the way Emily clung to my arm to sleep. I could handle it, even if my body said otherwise. I started to sleep little. He woke up with every noise. I cooked carefully to yield. He pretended to have a security that did not exist. All this in the name of a love that I did not ask for. But that chose me. And even on the heaviest days, even when the light was cut off for a week and I had to heat water on the stove, I never cried in front of them. Only in the bathroom, with my hand in my mouth so as not to make noise, because children are not to blame. Children feel, and I didn't want them to feel the pain that their mother left behind. Gradually, I became the reference for everything. Mother, Timokin, and Siganashselb, Kafaner, Old Stone. Grandmother, Mom. Teacher, doctor, win, cook, no. And what started as improvisation became routine, and the routine became our new life, a life built on top of an absence. But the world doesn't forget. And I, time has a strange way of charging what is hidden. And one day, he charged. Can you imagine what happened when someone found out that, officially, I had no right to those children? That's that. That day has come. And he brought with him a warning. Either I fought, knew, or I lost everything. It was on a cold November morning that everything changed. Hannah, my youngest, then 6 years old, woke up with a fever so high that she could barely open her eyes. She sweated, now, trembled, nice, and her little body looked like a furnace. I took her in my arms and rushed to the nearest hospital. When I arrived at the reception, almost out of breath, the attendant looked at me and asked, "Are you the legal guardian?" At that moment, time stopped. I hesitated. Wow. He said, "Yes, of course," with the firmness of someone who loves, but with the insecurity of someone who has nothing written to prove it. She looked at me with dry eyes and replied, "No, I'm going to need some documents." Ma'am. I showed birth certificate, health card, medicine prescription, but nothing had my name on it, only Claire's. I stood there, with my granddaughter burning in her arms and her heart crumbling inside. Why? After much insistence, no. The nurse was moved and agreed to admit Hannah as an emergency case, but warned, next time, Megira, was a chapatao. Bring the right papers. I went back home, sat at the kitchen table, and watched the steam from the kettle rise, climb, until it disappears from the ceiling. There, calm. I understood. Either I moved, or one day they would take from me what fate had placed in my hands. The next day, I went to the Asheville Legal Community Center. There, I met Teresa, a paralegal who looked like one of those women who have seen the world fall and know exactly where to start getting up. I explained everything, every detail, every silence from Claire, every crisis of the children. She listened carefully and, in the end, said, "No, We are going to file a request for temporary guardianship. It's your right. Swallowing that word was hard. Right. I never thought that taking care of my grandchildren could be something I needed to justify before the law. But life teaches. And in that moment, I learned that paperless love may not be worth anything on paper. We started the process. Teresa explained to me that, by law, I had to publish 3 notices in local newspapers, warning me that we were trying to locate Claire. We did that. I spent the little I had for the month. I cut the gas for a week to pay for the ads. No one answered. Oh, not even a phone call. Well, Sarah was not a letter. Nothing. 3 months later, I received an official notification. The judge had granted interim guardianship over Arthur. Oh, Emily and Hannah. No. When I read that, I cried. But not relief. I cried with guilt, because, even after everything, a part of me still felt like I was cheating on my daughter. It's strange to say that, I know, but there is pain that cannot be explained. There is love that is so deep that it hurts on both sides. But at that time, with the guardianship in my hands, I understood that sometimes protecting a child means facing those who put him in the world. It was the first time I felt like I was doing something right, not only with my heart, but also with the eye of righteousness. Since that day, I started to put away each paper, every prescription, every school report, every vaccination card. I began to live as if I needed to prove, at any moment, that my presence there was legitimate. And even so, even with everything, I still looked at the door on certain nights, thinking that Claire would return, with explanations, with repentance, with love. But she didn't come back, and the years passed, and my grandchildren grew up with the idea that their grandmother was all they had. And I learned to be everything. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story. If you're still listening to me, following me here, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you. Something that hurts, but also teaches. Something that a silent heart never forgets. Because the story doesn't stop there. Justice gave me custody, but it didn't prepare me for the day when Claire would come back, with a lawyer by his side, and an accusation I never thought I'd hear in my life. And when that happened, there was only one thing that could save me. Do you want to know what it was? So hold on, because when I discovered the value of keeping evidence, the other day, during a cold and silent afternoon, I opened the wooden trunk that is in my room, leaning against the wall near the window. It was one of those old trunks, with the smell of cedar and thyme, where I kept the few things I managed to gather over the years about the arrival of my grandchildren. Sometimes I avoided opening it, not out of forgetfulness, but out of protection. Each piece of paper inside was a memory that still throbbed. The first thing I found was a photograph. Arthur, Emily, my grandchild, and Hannah were sitting on the couch, all with confused looks, dirty clothes, tangled hair, not true. and tangled eyes. My God, the eyes. They seemed to ask for something without knowing how to name it. I immediately remembered Mary Ann, my neighbor across the street, a retired nurse. She was the one who told me that week, Ruth, well, photograph everything for the sake of the children. What? Why not ding dong? For yours too. We never know what tomorrow will bring. At the time, I thought it was exaggerated. Oh, wow. But I obeyed. I printed the photos, kept receipts from pharmacies, pool tickets, and in that trunk were also Emily's drawings with words scribbled in colored pencils. To Mama Claire, me here, with broken hearts all around, and a letter from Arthur, hourly Dogdenat, written in trembling handwriting, saying, "Today I didn't cry. Grandma, am strong to take care of Hannah. Liam." I sat on the floor, surrounded by those papers, as if I were in the middle of a battlefield won with silence and tenderness. I relived each sleepless night, every fever, each birthday improvised with a box cake and a balloon tied with sewing thread. There was a year that I had a party with only popcorn and candies. Even so, I hear and dare not cry. They laughed like it was Disney. I didn't want them to remember childhood as abandonment. I wanted them to remember what was possible to build, even without his mother. Even without money. Now, I must spend even without knowing if one day all that would have any value. Now, seeing those tests there in front of me, I understood that they were not just memories. They were witnesses of the state in which they arrived. Then what I faced, of the love that did not scream, but resisted. A part of me wondered, did Claire remember how she left her children? Did she ever think about the condition they arrived in? Doubt. She disappeared. And with her went any trace of responsibility. I was left with the weight and affection, with the pain and with the smiles, with the nocturnal cries and the parties with crooked candles. Claire, perhaps, didn't keep anything, but I kept everything, because in the end, those who really love, it even takes care of the memory of the other. But you know what I didn't expect? It's just that one day, those same photos and papers would be my shield, my last resort. Because when Claire reappeared, with that pretty talking, cold-looking lawyer, she didn't know I had a trunk, and much less what was inside him. And believe me, that was going to change everything in the courtroom. Want to know how? Wait, because it's in the next part that the masks start to fall. The call came on any given morning, one of those that start with warm coffee and a towel hanging on the kitchen chair. Arthur had left early for work. Emily was in her room reading. And Hannah was doing her homework at the desk with that concentration that only a very sensitive teenager can maintain. The landline rang, which was already strange. No one else called him, except the pharmacy or the pastor of the church. I answered with that tired hello, and on the other side, the voice, there, I'm said, ha. drought, cold, recognizable, even after so many years. Mom, she said, and my whole world stopped. Claire, 13 years of silence, and now a link. Ow, I didn't hear a hi. Nora, hey, how are you? Only the phrase that came next. Said, as if he were charging for a lost package, I want my children back. It took me a while to breathe. I put my hand to my mouth and was speechless. She repeated, you had no right to hide them from me. In a lawsuit? No, and he hung up like this, without hearing my voice. Why? Without asking how they were. I felt my legs weaken. I sat slowly in the kitchen chair, looking at the glass that trembled in my hand. Minutes later, my now went out by. On the large stove to worked to also. Hannah appeared at the door. Is everything okay, Grandma? I smiled. Neo. Yes, it is. Honey. But inside me, nothing was. In the afternoon, while I was still trying to understand if it had really happened, the postman appeared with a white envelope. It was not a letter. It was a judicial notification. Buncombe County Officer, and what in no search Claire, now married to a certain Brian Sullivan, a name I had never heard before, was asking for full custody of the children. It said that I kept them away from her illegally. The accusation? Parental kidnapping. That gave me a lump in my throat that didn't even untie. I found myself sitting in the same kitchen where I had already bandaged them, served soup, and taught multiplication tables. Now, as a defendant for being careful, for having loved, for having been where she has never been. And the cruelest thing was that all this seemed rehearsed. Her speech on the phone, the lawyer in the notification, the legal tone of the words. Claire did not return as a daughter. She returned as an accuser, as if I were a thief, as if my grandchildren were an object that she forgot in the garage, and now wanted back. And me? I stood there, my hands cold and my heart pounding, trying to understand how life can turn upside down, even when you spend years trying to do everything right. Look, if you've come this far with me, I ask you one thing. Stay, because the strongest part is yet to come. There are things that haven't even started to hurt in this story yet. And I'll tell you everything, because no one imagines what it is like to open the door of their house to justice and realize that your life has become a process. But how can someone who has been missing for 13 years accuse me of kidnapping? That's the question that didn't let me sleep. And the answer, down. Well, the answer was going to come in the form of a lawyer with a stone's eye, and a court where I would have to prove what I should never need proof. That I was a mother, that I was love, that I was a presence, and when that day came, I took an envelope with me, an envelope that no one expected. Do you want to know what was inside? So listen, because that's when everything starts to turn. After the notification, I spent 3 nights without being able to sleep properly. I tossed and turned in bed, with the noise of the old fan spinning on the ceiling, imagining everything that could go wrong. Could they really take my grandchildren away from me? Would that word kidnapping stick to me like a stain that won't come out? And it was in one of those silences at dawn that I got up, went to the old closet in the hallway, and pulled out a red folder that had not seen the light of day for years. It was the folder where I kept old documents, school reports, prescriptions, vaccine notes, and inside, held by a yellowish rubber band, was the envelope. Noun, what's the envelope? A thick yellow envelope with my name written by herself. Claire. I never threw it away. I also never showed it to anyone, not even for the children. It was like a secret that I kept between my heart and instinct. I opened it slowly, feeling a shiver in my arm. On yourself. Inside were 5 letters, all written in the months following her departure. The first began with a vague apology. No, saying that things were hard and that she needed a break. The others, they became harder and harder. In one of them, she said in all letters, Brian thinks this is not the time to have children at home. We will try a new life. You'll take better care of them than I am. That wounded me like a nail in the soul. But the worst was yet to come. At the bottom of the envelope, folded in a notebook paper, was a hand-signed note, recognizable by the slanted handwriting. I, Claire Marie Vance, leave in the care of my mother, Ruth Eleanor Vance, full responsibility for my 3 minor children, until I am able to return. It was not a formal legal document, but it was proof, a confession, a surrender. In a weird outcome, my eyes filled with tears, not with relief, but with mourning, because there it was written, black and white, that my daughter left me with her children, as if they were unwanted luggage. And now, I wanted them back, as if they were trophies. I sat on the edge of the bed and held those letters to my chest. I took a deep breath and thought, how far will a mother go for a man who doesn't want her children? It's hard to understand. Even more difficult is to forgive. But at that moment, I understood that I had something powerful in my hands that could turn the tide. I needed to show it. I needed to protect, not by me, but for my grandchildren, who grew up with the truth of abandonment in their hearts, even if they never had the words to name it. Look, let me ask you something now. Have you ever been through a moment like this? When old truth that you tried to hide, to protect someone, ends up becoming the only thing that can save you? If this has ever happened to you, comment below. Write it's true, or I know how it is, or I understand you. How? Just so I know that I'm not alone in this feeling. There are certain pains that only those who have lived it understand. I took everything to Teresa at the community office. When she read the last letter, she looked at me differently. For the first time, I saw respect in her eyes, not just empathy. With this, Mrs. Ruth, we can strengthen your defense and expose her intention from the beginning. How? We prepare everything. We scan. Ah, we attach it. We include it in the process. Teresa explained to me that the note was not a document with definitive legal force, but that, together with the letters and the years of silence, it was more than enough to dismantle the image that Claire was trying to convey. The image of a mother who had her children kidnapped. Justice sometimes needs the lived truth more than the spoken truth. And my truth, it was all in that envelope. But even with all this, one question kept popping into my head. How did Claire know exactly when and how to attack me? Who was feeding her with details about our life here? The answer, what's there, Tom was sicker now. I'd give you. It came from the mouth of someone I would never suspect. And what this person told me, oh wow. My hands still tremble, just remembering it. On the morning of the trial, the sky was heavy, the kind that doesn't rain, but also doesn't let the sun in. I left the house with the yellow envelope inside the brown bag I've been using for years. The straps are already worn out, but I don't change them. She has already carried purchases, medicine, toys, tears, and now, I was carrying my last chance. I arrived early at the Buncombe County District Court. The building was cold, not white marble and muffled silence. As I entered the courtroom, I felt the weight of the eyes upon me. Full benches, people I didn't know, journalists from local websites, curious people, and in the middle of it all, Claire, why, disenchanted Israel, sitting next to a tall lawyer, unthinkable calm, lesioned, a Canadian, wearing an expensive jacket and looking that did not deviate from the cell phone screen. She wore a dark blue dress, hair tied in a bun I've never seen her before, and her face with heavy makeup, long. But what hurt the most was his gaze, empty, no trace of the girl I cradled in my arms. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He didn't. He only looked at me, as if observing an obstacle on the way. The judge entered. Everyone stood. I sat alone on the opposite side, with no one on my side except God. Teresa had a problem with the car and would be late. Is Mrs. Ruth Eleanor Vance present? The judge asked. I raised my hand. My voice cracked, but I was able to say, no. Yes, Your Honor. The hearing began. Claire's lawyer spoke with a calm that made me dizzy. He said that her mother had been prevented from exercising her natural right, that she had been silenced, excluded, left out of the lives of her own children. He spoke in an indignant tone, with rehearsed words, almost like an actor in a bad play. Claire was crying, or pretended. She said that she spent years trying to find her children again, but was constantly blocked by the manipulative mother that kept them away, built a false narrative, and emotionally washed. Each sentence was a knife, and I was there, motionless, not knowing whether to hold the envelope or the heart. The judge turned to me. Mrs. How low say not consutan. Vance, do you have anything to say? My hands trembled. I took the yellow envelope from my bag and held it in my lap. It weighed like lead. I looked at Claire, and for a second, he wanted to leave everything, give up. No, deliver, go away, because there, no, in that courtroom, oh, she was not my daughter. She was my accuser, and she was the criminal. I took a deep breath. I remembered Emily's first fever, her aching back from carrying Hannah on her lap, the nights when Arthur cried for fear of thunder. I remembered the school meetings, the snacks made with stale bread, the improvised costumes for Halloween parties. I remembered the love I offered, even though it had never been asked, of care that became identity. I wanted to shout, "How is it that someone who has been missing for 13 years has the courage to call me a kidnapper?" But my mouth wouldn't open. I trembled inside. I was standing in front of the world, and no one saw the weight I was carrying. I wasn't just a 67-year-old lady with a tired face. I was home. I was the root. I was all that was left when she left. And at that moment, I was afraid, fear of losing the only 3 reasons that made me follow. Because there, no, and see in that courtroom, the truth seemed too small in front of the well-rehearsed theater. What if justice did not listen to me? What if everything I experienced was swallowed up by that beautiful speech? It was at that moment, when the silence of the room pressed down on me, that the door opened, and when I saw who came in, my legs almost gave way, because that person, I was about to turn everything upside down. And what was she going to say? No one in that court was prepared to listen. When the courthouse door opened, no, my heart raced. For a moment, I thought it was Teresa finally arriving, but no, it was Arthur, my boy, my grandson, Waizukta, my son. In practice and in soul, he entered wearing the blue shirt he wore when he went to job interviews, hair slicked back, the posture of a man, but the look of someone who carried inside him every year without a mother, every day with a fever, every snack shared with me in silence. Arthur saw me standing and walked to the witness stand. The judge frowned. Surprised. "Are you on the witness list, young man?" he asked. "No, sir," Arthur replied firmly, "but I need to talk." Claire's lawyer protested, but the judge, perhaps curious, allowed it. Since I was 7 years old, this woman has taken care of me. She was the one who stood by me when I had an ear infection. She made a waffle when I was recovering in math. She taught me how to drive, who gave me the courage to look for a job, who cried hidden in the bathroom so as not to worry. The court was silent. Claire crossed her arms, her eyes half closed, as if she were seeing a stranger. Arthur continued, "Well, wonder us oh. I don't know what this woman who is here now thinks motherhood is. But if you think that just because you gave birth, you have the right to show up 13 years later with a lawyer and pretend to care, so she's wrong." Well, yeah. My chest tightened. Well, I wanted to run to him, but I stood there, motionless. Because at that moment, he was the one who was defending me, he who now carried the truth in his voice. When Arthur finished, the judge asked him to sit down. Claire's lawyer stood up. No, Whitney now straightened his tie and went back on the attack. She said I was an emotionally fragile, elderly woman who probably manipulated her grandchildren with guilt and fear. He spoke beautifully, with difficult words. He said that the process showed effective alienation, destruction of maternal bonding, and possessive behavior. I just took a deep breath. The words hit like invisible slaps. When it my turn, wise, my hands were shaking. I got up, held the yellow envelope, and went to the microphone. The judge looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Vance, you have the floor." I breathed, grounded, knee, how, and let the truth out. "I don't have legal study, Your Honor. I don't know how to say those beautiful words, but I know what it is to care. I know what it's like to stay awake 3 nights in a row because Emily had hypoglycemia and almost fell into a coma. I know what it's like to sell my wedding ring to pay for Hannah's shoe for the recital. I know what it's like to receive a note from school saying that Arthur isolated himself because he missed a male presence, and yet do everything to make him feel enough." My voice failed. The silence was total. I looked at the seats and saw a young man wiping the corner of his eye, a lady crossing her hands in her lap. If being a mother is just giving birth, then Claire is a mother. But if being a mother is not abandoning, it is not disappearing for 13 years. It is holding hands with a fever. It is going to every parent's meeting. So forgive me now. But she's too late. The lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge raised his hand. "Go on, Mrs. Vance." I opened the envelope. I drew the cards. "She wrote me this here. It's all here." She herself wrote that she was leaving, that she did not want to take the children because the new man did not accept it. She said it was better for them. I haven't shown this before because I thought there was still a chance that she would come back as a mother. But now I need to protect them. I handed the papers to the judge. He read for a few minutes. Impassive. Now what is secret? Wasn't cow. When he looked up, he said, "Oh, let's record it as new evidence." It was at that moment that Claire stood up. He looked at me with hatred and shouted, "You always wanted to steal my life. I always wanted to be alone. You play nice, but you are manipulative. You poison them against me." The judge hit the gavel. "Mrs. Sullivan, control yourself. I did you." But I had already seen what I needed to see. Her mask fell there. in front of everyone. And maybe more. It wasn't just the judge who had noticed. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. Oh, this makes more difference than you think. But the trial was not yet over. The judge scheduled a new hearing, and it was in that pause that something happened. Something that neither the court, nor the lawyer, near Cernskaphan, Hansianstane, nor Claire foresaw. This I. And when I tell you what it was, you will understand that justice sometimes comes from where we least expect it. On the day of the second hearing, the atmosphere was different. The sky is still gray, but inside me, no, there was something different, a strength that did not come from words or proofs. It came from what I knew. That love lived even in silence, leaves marks that no one erases. The judge had decided to listen to the grandchildren, one by one. When Arthur was called, when he got up with the calm of someone who had already faced life without shortcuts. He walked to the witness stand, looked at the judge and said, "For years, my mother never called. No. He never sent a card. No. Not even a photo. Nothing. My grandmother was there. She taught me to be a man, and not with speech, but with attitude. When I turned 14, she took me to my first internship interview, even though she didn't understand much about computers. She sat at the front desk for 3 hours, waiting for me, just to make sure I didn't give up. Claire moved her legs, impatient. He mumbled things to the lawyer, but Arthur continued, so high, his eyes fixed on the judge. If I am someone today, it is because she believed in me when I doubted myself. Then it was Emily. She already entered emotionally. He sat down, straightened the sleeve of his blouse, and said in a choked voice, "I found out I had diabetes when I was 10. I got sick at school. I was taken to the hospital. My grandmother, he went 3 days without sleeping. She learned to apply insulin on her own, watched videos on the internet, went to meetings with a nutritionist, all so that I would feel safe." She paused, wiped away her tears with a handkerchief. I never knew what it was like to have a mother present, but I always knew what it was like to have someone who loved me every day. At that time, Claire stood up. They're being manipulated. She put those words in their heads. The judge hit the gavel. One touch TV Hugh. Mrs. Howell. Sullivan. Howell. If you interrupt again, you will be removed from the room. An embarrassed silence spread. Emily went back to her seat, and then they called Hannah, my little one, that it was not so small anymore. He entered with short but firm steps. She sat down, took a deep breath, and said, "I don't remember my mother. I remember my grandmother, of how she sang to me when I was afraid of thunder, of how she made chamomile tea when I couldn't sleep, of how she slept sitting on the floor of my room when I had nightmares. the judge asked. And how do you feel now? With your mother's request? Hannah looked at him with a seriousness that hurt me. I'm afraid she'll leave again. Oh, that takes us away from Grandma. And then disappear. Like the last time. A pause. Grandma never left. I couldn't stand it. I lowered my head. No, you weren't intoxicated and self-soy. Hugged my bag in my lap. No. I tried to hold back my tears because it was there, nice, at that moment, that everything made sense. Everything. All the years of silence. All the waffles on Sunday. Weirden, Wijilabai. I sticken shatu. All the sleepless nights. They turned into words that no one could ignore. And if you've been with me this far, well, continues, because the most remarkable thing about this story is yet to come. There's a part that even I didn't expect, a turnaround that did not come from the judge, nor from the lawyers. It came from someone who I never imagined. And what this person said, he made the entire court fall silent. You won't believe it. When the judge asked me to come closer to hand over the envelope, my hands were steady. No, my lord, it wasn't pride. It was peace. The peace of those who have carried the truth in their arms for years and finally find the courage to show it. I walked slowly to the table and handed over the yellow envelope that I had kept for so long, as if it were a wrapped wound. The wagon was loud. I succumbed. The clerk opened it, carefully removed the contents, and handed it to the judge. The pages were folded, but intact. Letters, tickets, a piece of the soul of someone who, at some point, gave up on being a mother. Wow. Claire kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Brian, her husband, looked suspiciously, as if that was the first time he had heard of those letters. The judge began to read. Mom, I don't know how to say this, but I can't take the kids with me. Brian doesn't want to. We need a clean start. He paused. The room was mute. If you want, I can send you money for a while, but please don't keep trying to get me to come back. I need space. I need you to forget about that phase. The judge turned the page. He read another. Do you confirm that you wrote that? Mrs. How Andion Sullivan? He asked. Claire was white as paper. No. He opened his mouth, hesitated. No. Nani Gabbing. Then said, Eoli, one noun. I told Tufsel the card. He say, I was going through a very difficult time. I didn't know what I was doing. I was mentally shaken. The referee raised his eyebrows, but he signed. And do you recognize the handwriting? She shook her head. Slowly. Yes. And there. Oh, please. At that moment, I saw it. I saw her narrative fall apart. The theater, the rehearsed speeches, the window tears, everything falling down, little by little. Brian pulled away slightly on the bench, as if that woman next to him was now a stranger. The lawyer was speechless. For the first time, I returned to my seat in silence, the teary eyes. But the light chest. I didn't need to shout or point. The truth itself had made its way. And there are memories that mark us forever. Like that time, Emily wrote, at the young now, do not help us. A note saying you are my mother at heart. Grandma, when you must say about. I kept this little paper in a drawer, along with drawings, baby teeth, and hair ribbons. It's funny how such small things carry so much of us, right? Tell me here in the comments. Do you have any memories like this? Some letter, note, or gesture that was kept in my chest forever. I'll love to read it. But there, back in court, I realized that the tide had turned. For the first time, I saw the referee's gaze soften as he stared at me. And yet, I knew the lawsuit wasn't won. There was still a surprised witness, one that was not on anyone's list. And when that person stood up, even Claire lost her color. After the heavy silence that formed with the reading of the letters, I thought that nothing else could surprise me in that courtroom. But there was something I had been keeping, a part of the story that, until then, I myself avoided looking into the eyes when the grandchildren were still small. When my older brother, my old eye, Thomas, became very ill. He had no children, nor a wife. He was a reserved man, but he always had a special affection for Arthur. Emily and Hannah knew the last Christmas he spent with us. Still, with some lucidity, he called me to the corner of the room and said, and Tom, Ruth, if something happens to me, I want you to ensure that these children have a dignified new beginning. You've done more for them than anyone else would. I'll leave something for them. I didn't say anything at the time. I just shook my head in silence, like everything I've ever lived. When he passed away, 6 months later, I received a phone call from the estate's lawyer. Thomas had left a sum of $50,000 for each grandchild. A beautiful, generous gesture. And how frankly, necessary. I kept this information very carefully. Now the voice to his son part. It shouldn't trouble it. I opened an account for each of them. In the name of the 3 of them. With a blocking clause until they turned 25. I did this to protect. It wasn't my money. It was theirs. And no one, not even the mother who abandoned them, would have the right to touch a penny. But something deeply bothered me the day Claire reappeared. The timing, the coldness, the look that did not seek affection, only control. And when Teresa began to investigate the legal action behind the lawsuit Claire had filed against me, everything became clearer than ever. We found out that 2 weeks before she called me, Claire had requested access to the records of my brother's estate at the town registry office. How? Way? We don't know for sure. But her name was there, in the electronic record. She read the will when she learned of the inheritance, and 2 weeks later, Wasor went to October. He appeared with a lawyer. Now, a rehearsed speech and promises to want to reconnect with his children. During the hearing, with the envelope already registered as evidence, the judge asked if there were any more relevant documents. It was then that I asked permission to present the copy of the inheritance report and the proof of opening the grandchildren's accounts. The judge leafed through the papers. The tension in the air was almost palpable. Claire shifted in her chair. Brian, her husband, now looked at her suspiciously. Her lawyer wiped her forehead with a handkerchief. Mrs. Vance, said the judge. Are you asserting that your daughter's actions coincide with the discovery of the value of the inheritance left by your brother? I nodded, without having to repeat it. And are the amounts intact in the grandchildren's accounts? Yes, Your Honor. All documented. Nothing was used. They are legally protected. The judge then turned to Claire. Miss Sullivan, did you have prior knowledge of this amount before filing for custody? She hesitated. He looked at the lawyer, then at me. I knew my uncle had left something, but that's not why Her voice faded away. The judge said nothing for a few seconds. He just put his arms on the table and watched. And there, I didn't calm. And there, in that pause, I knew, the truth, the one that we carry like a cross for years, had finally been seen. But, it was not only the court that heard that, it was also the conscience of my grandchildren. I noticed it in Arthur's eyes, in the handshake that Emily gave me when I returned to the bench, and in Hannah's sigh of relief, as if to understand that the fear of losing everything was finally diminishing. And if you've been with me this far, still listening to this story, I thank you, because there are things that we carry in silence for so long that we start to doubt our own memory. But when the truth comes out, she has the strength of a storm, and this storm was going to bring even more, because behind the scenes of that court, there was someone who knew everything, and he decided to break the silence just at the moment when no one expected it. And what this person said turned the trial upside down. The intermission of the hearing was announced, and I went to the water cooler in the hallway, trying to calm my breathing. His hands were still shaking, not out of fear, but because of the weight of what had been revealed inside. As I filled the plastic cup with water, I heard footsteps behind me. I soon power. I didn't have to turn around. The perfume was the same. Presence, too. Claire stood next to me and said softly, as if she was embarrassed to hear her own voice, Mom, I can talk to you. Just a minute. I nodded. No, there was no anger in me, only a deep tiredness, one of those that time digs into the soul. We walked to an empty room, where there were some waiting chairs and an artificial plant in a corner. She sat facing me. Why? Her eyes red. Her face less made up than at the beginning of the day. For a moment, she looked like that 12-year-old girl who one day cried for not being chosen for the school's volleyball team. But what came out of her mouth was quite different. I didn't want to go back like that. But, Brian, He saw the inheritance papers when he was going through my aunt's old files. He said it was all right, that I needed to resume my position as a mother. And did you think it was just a matter of walking in the door, pointing your finger and recovering what you never took care of? I asked, without changing my voice. She lowered her head. I was afraid. Mom, fear of them hating me. Ah, afraid to face everything I left behind. Then when he said that we could solve this in court, I accepted. I stared at her in silence. There was no surprise, no sorrow, just the cold realization of a truth that I already knew. Claire was an idiot, I said slowly. No, fear doesn't justify abandonment. You were 13 years old. 13? How many birthdays have passed? How many sleepless nights? How many times did Emily have to measure sugar by herself at the age of 10? Because you went there. She was crying now. Not discreetly. It was a cry of someone who finally leaned his soul against the wall. Nessa, I'm not the same person as before. Ah, she said. I'm not, no. But it's also not someone who came back for love. Came back for money. There's enough to war. You sue, Claire. And even now, with everything wide open, you only came to talk because your mask fell off before the judge. She looked at me as if expecting a hug, as if there was still that instinct of a mother who welcomes, even wounded. Wow. And perhaps, deep down, there was still left. But at that moment, I couldn't. I was a grandmother. I was responsible for 3 lives she left. And my duty was for them. You know that it is not the justice that will give you these children back. They are not lawyers or judges. They are not the accuse wanted her or seem to have stolen. And have you ever stopped to listen to what they feel? Claire was silent. For the first time since the beginning of that nightmare. My so proud, Dojo. She seemed to understand that she had crossed a line. Mom, I'm sorry that he wants. Regretting what? Of what he did, or of not having achieved what he wanted. The question came out on its own, not out of malice, but out of necessity. I needed her to look at the pain she caused. That he didn't just say sorry, but understood the hole he left. She did not answer long. He just lowered his eyes. The silence between us was full of unspoken words, years not lived, questions with no return. They are good boys, Helm. They are polite, respectful, kind, was despite everything. You should be proud. But you weren't the one who made them like that. She put her hand to her mouth. I'm trying to hold back her tears. I know. I'm. So listen to that now. Oh, Claire. Helm. I don't hate you. I never hated it. It just hurt me too much to see that you preferred to disappear. I waited. I waited days, weeks, years, and every absence of his was a kind of grief. She looked up, trying to read me, but there was no longer any doubt, only truth. If you want to start over, start by listening. He begins by asking them for forgiveness, not me. They are the ones who need an answer. You owe a calm. They stashed and the two of her jaw. Claire nodded slowly. When, the pain in her eyes was real, but it was no longer my responsibility to heal. I don't know where to start. So it starts with silence. He no longer tries to explain himself. Alone, listening, and then take what comes. Because when we abandon, the return never comes easy. We sat there, side by side, knew, like two women who knew what it was like to lose. But only one knew what it was like to stay. And when the officer announced that the hearing was going to resume, she got up first. He looked at me one last time before leaving. And in this look, there was something new, human, why, wounded, but true. But what Claire didn't know was that the judge's decision was already formed. And what would he say in a little while? It would change everything once and for all. Can you imagine what it was? So get ready, because when he opened his mouth, the entire court was silent. When we returned to the courtroom, everything seemed slower. The creaking of the door, and the sound of footsteps, even the sound of wood as I sat down again on the bench. The grandchildren were there, silent, but present. Teresa, next to me, put her hand on mine for a second, a small gesture. Will you? But one that gave me an extra breath. Claire was already in her place, his eyes swollen, his face haggard. For the first time, she didn't look at war. She just looked tired. The judge entered and everyone stood up. He looked at his watch, then at the papers before him. 9. And he began, without before, no didios capitalism. This court followed. Throughout these hearings, not only the facts, but the silences, and sometimes what is not said weighs more than any argument. He paused. My heart seemed to want to leave my chest, but I kept my eyes steady, as someone who had seen many injustices and learned to wait seated. Mrs. Ruth Eleanor Vance presented overwhelming evidence that she took over the care, education, now, health and protection of minors for more than 13 years. During this period, there was no consistent, legitimate or effective attempt on the part of the mother to resume contact or comply with legal and emotional responsibilities. The room was silent. You could hear the zipper of a woman's purse in the background being closed slowly. In addition, now, he continued, it was recorded in handwritten documents that Mrs. Claire Sullivan intentionally stepped aside, relinquishing custody of the children of her own free will. These documents have been confirmed as authentic, and so there is no ignoring their relevance. He then stared at Claire. She tried to keep her gaze, but soon turned away. You abandoned your children, and now, it returns based on financial, not affective, interests. The court is not blind to pain, but it is not deaf to the truth either. He turned to me, And he spoke slowly, with a solemnity that I will never forget. The guardianship of the minors will be maintained with Mrs. Ruth Vance, who has demonstrated, by deeds and not words, to be the safe haven of these 3 lives. In addition, Ohio, Brigadier found Adicios, the love subcount, unnaturistas. In the name of the emotional protection of those involved, a 5-year restraining order will be issued against Claire Sullivan, preventing direct contact except through supervised legal or psychological means. The murmur in the room was immediate, not of scandal, but of relief, as if the walls wanted to sigh along with me. Claire sank into the bank, crying softly. Brian left the room, his face impassive, down. Her lawyer didn't even look up. And then the judge said the phrase that echoes in my heart to this day. There are mothers who give birth, and there are mothers who create. Today, this court recognizes the difference. I closed my eyes, not out of pride, nor out of vanity, but because, inside, my spirit knelt. I thought of Thomas, of every night I spent cooling a fever, of every letter I found in my backpacks, of every look from my grandchildren saying, "Stay with us." And if you've been listening to me so far, I ask you, like this video and subscribe, not by me, but for every woman who has ever held the world with tired arms and still hasn't let go. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. And if you think that after all this Claire disappeared, that's where you get wrong, because a gesture she made after the hearing showed me that maybe, just maybe, her story was not yet over. When the hearing was over, the courtroom corridor seemed longer than ever. I left slowly, with the envelope still clutched to my chest, as if I kept in it all that was left of my dignity. The late afternoon light poured in through the tall windows and drew golden spots on the floor. I just wanted to get to the door and breathe free air again. But before I could take 3 steps, I heard a voice behind me, faint, tired, almost a whisper. Mother? Mother? Stopped. The sound still hit me like it used to, even after everything. I turned slowly. Claire was standing there, leaning against the wall. Her shoulders slumped, her face swollen from crying. Her lawyer had already left, and Brian, her husband, didn't wait for her. "I've lost everything," she said, her voice breaking. "He left. He said he doesn't want to know about me anymore. You left me with nothing. Mom, period. Not a house. Not money. Not a name." I stared at her in silence. It was strange to see her like this, stripped of pride, no, of speech, of anger. This in some way, just a broken woman, trying to gather what was left of herself. I don't want pity. I just wanted to ask for forgiveness. Her words were floating between us. "Why now, Claire?" I asked. Why only after losing? She wiped away her tears with her sleeve. Because I couldn't before. I knew what I had done, but I didn't know how to face it. Ah, shame is a prison. Mom, I looked at her. And for a moment, I saw the girl who one day slept on my lap after falling off her bike. The same one who promised that she would be a good mother when she grew up. Forgiveness is choice. Claire, no, I replied. It's not negotiation. And mine, oh, if it comes, will be in God's time, not yours. She lowered her head, crying more quietly. Lise, I understand. I deserve it. I stood there, now, standing still, the sound of people passing by, the heels hitting the marble floor, the distant buzz of the other audiences. Everything became small. You know what? I said, oh, almost without thinking, oh, when you left, I hated you for months. But then I just missed it. And now, seeing you like this, I don't even feel angry. I feel sadness, because it could have been different. She lifted her face, her eyes red. Can you still? It can start to be, but not to erase what happened, to rebuild what was left. Claire nodded. And he left, without saying anything else. That night, when I got home, I sat in the kitchen and stared at the unlit stove. Loneliness sometimes smells, the smell of cold coffee, and memories that don't go away. I took a grocery bag, filled it with rice, beans, soap, dinner, cow. And the next day I went to the address that Teresa gave me. It was a small apartment, close to the road, and Claire opened the door with a startled look, as if she couldn't believe I had really gone. I didn't come to argue. I came to leave that. She looked at the bag and started crying. Mom, I don't deserve this. I know. I replied, no. But deserving was never what guided me. I entered, looked around. The walls were bare, only a mattress on the floor and a thin blanket. I put the groceries in the sink, arranged the bread on the shelf. Down the cube. No, not soaked. The silence between us was tense, but clean. I can't promise you anything. I said before leaving, neither coexistence nor reconciliation, but I don't wish you harm, and that I will pray for you. She hugged me. It was a trembling, uncertain, now calm, strengthless embrace, but still, I'll warn you. Hugs, and at that moment I understood one thing. Piety does not cancel prudence. We can forgive, but we still need to protect our hearts. Sometimes, to love is to let someone reap what they have sown, and still not turn their faces. If you've made it this far, I want you to stay with me. Because what happened after that visit, it was something that even I didn't expect. There are times when the past gives us back something we thought we had lost forever. And what I found days later, It was the kind of gesture that changes the meaning of everything that came before. 3 months had passed since that day in court, and life, little by little, began to find its own rhythm again. Now, autumn came to Asheville, sailed mine, and the leaves of the trees in Montfort covered the sidewalks as if the whole world wanted to dress anew. I woke up early again, as I always did, but now the silence of the house no longer hurt. It was a silence of peace, not of absence. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen again. Wow. And the mornings had the sound of light footsteps and young voices. Arthur started engineering college, and every time he left the house with that old backpack, my chest tightened with pride. Emily got a job at the bookstore in town, and every week she brought me a used book, saying, "Grandma, Lee, come cigar to town. This one has your way." Hannah continued with the violin, and on Sundays she played in the neighborhood church. Sometimes I would sit in the back row just to hear her play. The sound of that violin was more than music. It was forgiveness in the form of a note. It was the echo of everything that resisted. The simple routine has become my shelter again. I made corn cake, ironed clothes, listening to the radio, and planted flowers in the backyard. And yet, now, I so handy, every once in a while. The memory of Claire came like a wind pushing back the curtain, unexpected, but without spoiling the day. I missed it. Yes, but not from the past. She missed the girl she was, before the world hardened her. And somehow I learned to let this longing exist without guilt. The restraining order gave me peace. No contact, no interference, no shadow. And life, finally, has settled down. Settled down. The house smelled of cake and sounded like laughter again. Arthur would sometimes hug me out of nowhere. Emily would make me coffee. And Hannah would leave notes on the table saying, "I love you, Grandma. What said your winter cafe?" Sometimes I would stand there, looking at the 3 cups on the table and thinking that maybe love was not only shelter, but also defense. That loving, in the right way, protects. It protects from loneliness, fear, and even evil. And it was in this new calm that I realized something curious. Time does not erase, but heals in its own way. And when I looked at the balcony, I saw that the old swing that had been standing still for years now swayed again, pushed by the wind. Smile, Neil to town. It was as if the house had breathed with me again. But life, even when it seems quiet, always keeps one last move. And mine was yet to come. Because one afternoon, when I thought everything was finally peaceful, I received an envelope in the mail. The sender, Claire Sullivan, and inside it, something that made my eyes water, like it hadn't happened in a long time. Do you want to know what was inside? So stay with me now, because sometimes forgiveness comes in a way that not even time dares to explain. The envelope arrived on a windy afternoon, and I hardly noticed the postman leaving it in the box. I took it along with the bills and supermarket pamphlets, without imagining what was there. Wound. When I saw the sender, Claire Sullivan, my heart tightened. But it didn't hurt. It was a different squeeze, the kind that comes when the past knocks on the door with less weight. I opened the envelope slowly, as if opening a forgotten time. Inside, there was a handwritten letter, with that crooked handwriting that I would recognize even in the dark. Mother, when you get out, it began. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I am trying to be someone better. I'm working as a receptionist in a clinic. And I've started therapy for the first time in a long time. In facing what I've done, Lord, I stopped reading for a moment, leaning the letter against the table. The noise of the wind in the trees seemed to answer for me. Why, I saw a woman at work taking care of a sick child, and she gave me a knot in my chest. It was like looking at everything I wasn't. I thought of you. I thought about everything I made you carry alone, and I realized that the worst loneliness is when we move away from those who still love us. Her words were simple but sincere. No request for money, no attempt to justify. Once you will. Only regret, raw, painful, mining, but clean truth. I continued reading. I know that I do not deserve your trust, and that I may never see you again. But I want you to know that I've stopped running away. And if the boys ever want to see me, I'll be ready to listen, not talk. I closed the letter and stayed there for a long time, sitting, staring into the void. It was strange, because for the first time I didn't feel angry. I felt peace. Claire was trying, in her own way. Why didn't you go? Was stuck her, after all, but trying. And that, for me, was already a miracle. A year has passed since that day, and life has taken its serene course. Arthur already drove his own car, worked part-time, and talked about moving to a small apartment in the center. Emily looked happy in the bookstore, and Hannah, accuse, one notier, and paustigiwab. Oh, my girl, my gal. She now gave violin lessons to children. The house was still alive, full of sound, smells and love. And sometimes, on silent Sundays, I thought about Claire, not with spite, no, but with that kind of mature nostalgia, which knows that time has its ways of healing what the law never could. The neighbor, Mrs. Millie, came to tell me one day that she saw Claire in town. He said that she seemed calmer, with an air of someone who had finally learned to walk slowly. As working in a clinic near the hospital, she said, she didn't talk about you, but her look, he was of someone who carries a good memory. I kept quiet, smile, Leo, and later, hands, as I watered the plants in the garden, with my hands dirty with dirt and a light heart. I looked up at the copper-colored sky and said softly, maybe now she's learning what it is to be a mother. The wind blew lightly, and for a second, I swear I smelled her perfume, the same one she wore when she was a teenager and sneaked out dancing. Smile, no, because deep down, I think that time does not punish, it teaches. And sometimes he teaches in the quietest way there is. I know a lot of people think my story ends here, but it doesn't, because days later, something happened. A small, very smart friend, up until a simple gesture that came from one of my grandchildren, the a solo night, and changed everything I thought was already solved. You'll understand what I mean, because when love is true, it always finds a way to surprise us, even when we think we've seen it all. Today, well, looking out the window of my house in Asheville, I see life with the serenity of someone who has been through a storm and learned to respect the silence after it. The grandchildren are grown up, each one following their own path. Arthur graduated from college and works helping needy families with housing projects. Emily is studying nursing and continues to work at the bookstore, still bringing me books from time to time. And Hannah plays the violin on Sunday afternoons at church. And sometimes, when the sound reaches my porch, I close my eyes and think that maybe this is the most beautiful sound in the world. The sound of a love that has won. Claire, as far as I know, continues to work in the clinic and follow the treatment. We don't see each other again, but she sends cards on holidays, simple cards, with few words, but full of silent regret, and that's enough for me. I don't hold anger. I keep learning. I am sure that love, when it is real, does not need a stage, nor a witness. He proves himself in persistence, in care, and on a daily basis. And today, after all, I understand. To love is not to allow. It is to protect, and to forgive is not to forget. It is to free oneself. The justice that life gave me did not come only from a judge. It came from my grandchildren, from time and from the peace I found within me. I won, but not because I won a lawsuit. I won because I didn't let the grudge win over me. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that life always puts us in front of the choices that define who we are. To shut up or explode, to keep or to let go, to harden or to understand. I chose to understand. I chose to keep loving, even when love seemed like a burden, because real love is not a trophy. It is a root now, and he sustains us even when the ground seems to give way. If you have listened to me so far, from the bottom of your heart, I thank you. Thank you for keeping me company in this story. Your presence on the other side of the screen makes me feel that all of this was worth it. Leave your like, which is like a warm hug that reaches me from here. And subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing these conversations like someone coming back for another coffee on the balcony. Also tell me where you're watching from. I love to imagine this wheel of stories spreading across so many different cities. And don't forget to activate the bell, so you don't miss it when the coffee is ironed again. Because, look, I still have a lot of stories in store, and one of them, the next one, talks about a woman who was forgotten by her family at Christmas, and what she did afterwards changed everyone's lives. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.